It's significant and really important in Scotland to properly identify a date of separation, principally because it's the date upon which the legislation says we have to identify a relevant date. It's of significance in relation to identifying what matrimonial property a couple have, valuing it at that date, and arranging for a calculation of how the net value of matrimonial property can be calculated. In Scotland, any assets acquired after separation are not taken into account. That is because we look at what are called the fruits of the marriage between the date a couple get married and when they separate. So anything that a couple or an individual acquires post-separation is irrelevant for calculating the net value of matrimonial property. On many occasions, there are increases or decreases in value of assets. In relation to assets that are in joint names, those are because they are jointly owned, and therefore parties would continue to share in any increase and decrease in value because of their ownership and title. However, in relation to assets that are in individual names, the cut-off is the date of separation, and any increase and decrease in value is irrelevant when calculating the net value of matrimonial property. It would, however, require to be taken into account in regard to resources. In regard to financial provision in Scotland, any order made by the court in deciding how to divide up the wealth accumulated by parties during the marriage, it has to be justified in terms of the statutory framework, but also reasonable having regard to the couple's resources. A cohabitation can quite sadly end when one of the cohabitants dies. In such circumstances, a survivor of that cohabitation relationship would require to lodge a claim within 6 months. And their claim would be in relation to against the estate of the person who died, and only in the event of death, whereby they hadn't left a will, which is called intestacy in Scotland. As the date of separation in relation to couples that are married or are civil partners is the essential part of the Scottish legislation, it is really important for early legal advice to be obtained. On some occasions, that relates to whether a couple should be separating or whether they have to time the separation, as it may have an impact in regard to any settlement, and that can be substantial and relate to thousands of pounds. In other cases, when someone is thinking about separating, they may also have to consider what is actually happening in relation to their relationship. And that is because in some cases a separation can be easily identified, or the date of separation can be easily identified. But in others, where there are relationships that are breaking down, that can take place over a long period of time. And a proper analysis of the relationship generally while parties are together and what happens after the day that they say they separate needs to be considered. In relation to parties who are having difficulties, on some occasions they might seek counselling or seek assistance in regard to saving their marriage. And certain aspects of the relationship can change. In relation to whether a couple are separated, the legislation refers to it as if they are cohabiting as man and wife or civil partners. That can be a variety of things. There is not one part of a relationship or factual element that is determinative. And therefore, a proper review of the particular circumstances of that couple requires to be undertaken. There are many people who are separated but continue to live under the same roof for a number of reasons, which may be financial, it may be because of their children, it may be also because of certain beliefs or religion. And those cases are the more difficult to assess when there's a date of separation. And in those cases, that's when a careful consideration of the actual detail of the parties' relationship is required. There have been cases in relation to the date of separation and relevant date in Scotland, and the core consideration is looking at that relationship objectively and in regard to all factors and circumstances. Sometimes it's quite easy to work out when a couple are separated, because either they will agree that that's the date of separation or something significant will have happened, and on some occasions that's as significant as the date they met or the date that they got married. However, in a surprising number of cases, couples cannot agree, and there can be quite a divergence of what a party considers to be their date of separation. And therefore, that's when the particular circumstances of their relationship requires to be considered. In one leading case, one party alleged that the separation had been 10 years after the other. In that case, what was considered was what had changed in that relationship, and it was actually assessed that they had split 5 years earlier. The court looks at matters objectively, and a number of factors can be considered. When the couple may have ceased socialising together, when they may have stopped eating together, doing family activities together, sleeping together, having intimate relations, or doing any sort of thing that they used to do before. And all of these matters sometimes can appear obvious, but a proper examination of all of the particular facts and circumstances. It is ultimately a consideration of the facts. If you have any queries, you should not hesitate to contact me or anyone at Waitmans, including my colleagues in the Scottish family team.